The logistical focus of post-Balkan War military reforms and excessive requisition, however, did not mean the soldiers were well fed as they marched into battle. On the contrary, in light of undeveloped transportation networks, shortages of train engines, and not to say the least, the physical distance between battlefronts and food-producing areas, Ottoman officials faced great difficulties in providing adequate food and nutrition for their soldiers. There are reports that say that supplies were destined for troops were consumed behind the front and never reached the fighting units, revealing that it was not simply a matter of transportation difficulties, but also the carelessness of military commanders, some whom worried little whether their men's stomachs were filled or not. Hunger eventually became a widespread epidemic in the Ottoman army, as rations were small and the nutritional value of the food were minimal. A soldier in training should at least consume 3,429 calories per day. Adding to weather conditions, whether it's heat or cold, the calories may increase to 4,238. In extreme cold, 4,738 in hot to tropical conditions. Peacetime daily rations for the Ottoman soldier in training included 900 grams of bread, 600 grams of biscuit, 250 grams of meat, and 150 grams of bulgur plus some butter and salt. These rations more or less met the required energy amount. Salam Tala merely suggested some of the conscripts joining the army was a potential escape from sure starvation, especially after famine-struck areas in Greater Syria in 1916. Living in army camps, the men entered into a cycle of disciplined work and experienced the luxury of 3 meals a day, consisting of meat, as they consumed meat, biscuit, an army biscuit, and some jam. Soldiers, as long as they were stationed in a more easily accessible training camp, were fed regularly, even though there were meager meals. But meager is better than starving. A Turkish reserve officer described the food during training as tea with a few slices of bread and sometimes olive for breakfast. For lunch and dinner, cabbage stew and fava bean soup. And once a week, green beans with meat. Not fancy meals by any standards, but it was better than one to starve. During the war, however, such rations were hardly, if ever, met, and a general trend of rations decreased over time. Bread rations for the Palestinian front, summertime or heat, were officially reduced to 500 then to 400 grams in 1916. On the Caucasus front, where it could escalate from snow to blistering hot, food supplies were sharpened and everyone was given 100 grams of flour each day. And that was all. Soldiers periodically had to survive on less than half a ration, at times not exceeding 60 grams of grain a day. Soldiers of some instances reveal almost no meat, no butter, no sugar, no vegetables, no fruit, and instead they were fed the same tin flour soup for months after months, or they were forced to bake flour wetted with snow into bread. The situation seemed worse for men conscripted into the volunteer labour battalions. Serving to build up supportive infrastructure, members of these compulsory work gangs, mainly made up of non-Muslims, peasants and often the poor, were starved to death while Ottoman officers stole their rations, if they had rations to begin with. And this was the most taxing work, as you had to lift wood, concrete, had to move it over there, do it over there, pull up ropes, and meager to no rations at all. It was not only human stomachs that shrunk and grumbled in agony, the animals as well faced starvation, and sometimes they would be a meal. The Ottoman army relied heavily on pack and drought animals such as camels, donkeys, mules, anything that could survive the desert, to move supplies and provisions. Hundreds of thousands of animals were indisciplined, added significant pressure on food supply. Often soldiers had to sacrifice their horses, their oxen, their donkeys and their livestock alive, just to survive. For example, running out of oats to feed the camels, the donkeys and the horses, soldiers in ammunition supply units were ordered to feed their own rations of army biscuits to the camels. The beasts begrudgingly chewed on their dry powdered crackers, under strict supervision from the unit's officers, preventing the soldiers from repossessing their crackers. Where it was available, the animals fed on forage, but being the desert, forage was not likely, and whatever little forage they had, the feed amount for the necessary caloric value was not there. Small rations with minuscule nutritional value. The international food deprivation of unarmed labour battalions and the added pressure on supply by animals meant the malnutrition and starvation was nearly universal, from the townspeople in Baghdad to the people fighting in the Caucasus and even the Persian guerrillas in the mountains, all starved. The result was demoralized, physically and mentally exhausted soldiers and a high number of deserters who cited hunger and fear of starvation as their primary motivation for abandoning their own units. A fear that was not unwanted, since malnutrition surely contributed to the deaths of nearly 500,000 soldiers, whom bodies could not withstand the onslaught of cholera, typhus, typhoon, dysentery and other diseases. Alright, before we go, there's something on the Axis forum or the Central Powers forum since this is not going to make any sense because this is still World War I, but Tomul Salah said that on the 15th of June 1917, dried grapes composed non-wheat soup and a loaf of bread, probably. On the 26th of June 1917, non-dried grapes composed and a loaf of bread. On the 18th of July 1917, as you can see, these are just like a month or even days apart. Dried grapes composed, non have a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread, you don't get the middle, dried grapes composed with no sugar. And these were the bare minimum and the best rations of 500 grams, and they decreased all the way to 500 grams. The starvation, the death, and the disease. Not only a bullet kills you in World War I, but your own army and their lack of feeding you does as well. Death comes in many ways, and one way is by not having a proper meal. So, hopefully you can, I don't know, how do I go it on this one? Pretty dark and depressing, 20 minutes for something I just randomly decided, you know what, let's go. So not bad. Anyway, eat something, learn something, and stay nutritious. You can't be a vegan, because that won't help you, and you can't always eat meat, because that's not going to help you. So you must have a balanced breakfast and a balanced ratio of everything. Nuts, fats, oils. And I'm not like a pediatrician. No, pediatrician is for children. I'm not like this exercise guru, this fitness channel, but try and eat a proper meal, because trust me, these soldiers didn't get the proper meal, and you see what happened to them. 100 years on, feed yourself. And yeah, we're not in wartime and you can eat whatever you want, and pizza has this, carbs and all the meat and whatever, but try and eat properly, at least like twice a day. No, at least three times a week, at least eat the proper diet. Anyway, I'm done. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a fitness guru, I shouldn't be telling you what to eat. I think a pediatrician, no, that's still a child doctor. It's a P, but it's not a pediatrician. Anyway, learn something, eat something, and drink some water. I don't know why they don't talk about water in the desert. Come on, like the oasis. Come on, water in the desert. Anyway, tomorrow we might do desert warfare or Jews, and that came out really anti-Semitic, so demonetized. But then again, I just talk about starving corpses and disease and malnutrition and death, so demonetized anyway. Learn something, eat something, and get ready for some shade, because probably desert warfare, because I might write the Jews tonight. Let's see what happens. Anyway, learn something, and of course, this video is brought to you by World War I Encyclopedia Online, 1914 to 1918 online. This is the best source for all your history, all your geographics needs, from film to movies to even food. 1914 to 1918 is where I get all my information from, and I'm not sponsored by them, but it's just an amazing site. I always link them in the description, of course, when they do it, but they really outdid themselves. Food, out of all things, food. Anyway, hope you learned something, and I'll catch you in the next one, and I'll leave the link as always. And yeah, you want to talk about North Africa, Muslims tomorrow? I don't know. We're in the region, so we could talk about whatever, as long as we're in the geographical region, or they're near the geographical region. We'll talk about this. So in Germany, we can talk about spies in the Middle East if you want to. We're in the region, we're in the Middle East, so whatever you want, I'm here to please. But if you don't want anything, I'll just do my own thing, probably film, maybe. Anyway, learn something. I'm done. I gotta go in bed. Later, boys and girls.